You think call me Walter? How many people call me Walter, do you think?
Nobody.
It's all online. Everybody calls me Walter online.
Walter.
Well, because a lot of my stuff is Walter.
Well, then change it to Wally, you goof.
I should change it. I should change all of my. Did you notice my shirt? Did you notice my shirt that I picked up today?
You're wearing tarantula
The
shirt?
fit today is, Frank's going to love this. The fit today is tarantulas. Can you see that? Tarantulas of the world.
Where did you get that?
I got this from, and welcome everybody. Thank you very much for joining tonight.
Scooter.
I'm Wally and
Nanette
from Supreme Gecko. I got this from Temu or whatever you call it. It was like $7. So I thought, if I'm buying $183, Nanette will never notice another $7 in there. Tarantulas. I thought
Wally's not getting tarantulas.
This is probably as close as I'm going to get to tarantulas. Nanette, who's here?
Frank is here. Marine Corps Reptiles is here. Angie's here. Shane's here. LP Lizards is here. Cassandra Pope is here. And JP Lizards are here. Did I hear Wally is getting tarantulas and a snake? Nope.
First step right here. This is the first step. If I can wear a shirt, then I can hold a tarantula, right? Isn't that the logical next step?
Nope.
I think it is.
Nope.
Nanette's saying no, folks. I don't know. I've never had any tarantulas because I have a huge fear of spiders, obviously. And I don't really mind as long as, it's in an enclosure and I can see it. I've held tarantulas a couple of times, which is really bizarre because I am deathly afraid of tarantulas, spiders. But if one is out and I can see it, that's cool. But if I turn and I look back and it's gone, then I have to leave the house and run away. I just have to run away. I have to get away from it as soon as possible. I'll tell you a quick story, and then we're going to get to our very special guest tonight, Jeff Knapp from GTL Geckos. So I'll tell this really quick story. I did a video a couple of weeks ago about building a stand, and our son Jordan and Crystal built the stand for us. It was an old rickety 2x2 stand, and they made it a 2x4 stand because we were putting 10 aquariums on it with substrate. So we wanted something better than a 2x2 that was 15 years old.
Now we have a rickety 2x4.
No, it's a perfect 2x4. So Jordan pulled down the 2x2, everything, and I helped him a little bit, and wood's out in the other place, and I carried the wood out to the garage. Well, what gets behind racks and stands after about 12 years? So I'm carrying the wood out, and I've got the wood. So I get back to Jordan, and he's building and screwing in the lag nuts and everything. And I look down. I can't remember. It was a lighter shirt that I had on. And sure enough, folks, this big of a spider walking up my shirt. Crystal's there, Jordan's there, Nanette's there.
I wasn't there.
Yeah, yes, you were.
Oh, so, yeah, I wasn't there. That's right.
Guess, I want everybody to put in the comments so that I get unmonetized here.
Yeah.
Guess the word that I said when I saw this spider crawling up my shirt.
I bet it was the same word that one of the kids said to me today.
Did you allow the
Oh,
person?
no.
What did you do?
He got to go down to the office. And we got to spend some time together down there with the principal. It was fun.
Mm-hmm.
We don't use
it
those
sounds
words.
Like a good time.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, Nanette, real quick. What do we have?
Angie?
What do we have going on? We have like nothing going on, right?
Oh, yeah. Our schedule is wide open.
Super quick.
We have a show this weekend. We basically have a very busy weekend. We have a show, and our weather appears to be getting very warm. So it looks like we might be shipping on Monday, possibly, which is a lot of orders that have been on hold because of the winter. And we did our first Palm Street last week. And we're doing our second Palm Street this Sunday night after our show. We're coming home and doing another Palm Street because it was a lot of fun.
So Sunday will be 5 a.m.
till probably midnight.
The show starts, the VIP starts at 10 o'clock. So we'll be there by 8. And then the reptile show stops at 3. Cleanup we leave by 4. Get back here. The Palm Street show starts at 7:30. We'll probably go for an hour and a half again. So, and then afterwards you have to clean up and write down numbers and information and everything,
And put all the animals
and
back.
put all the animals back. So we're probably looking at from
Midnight.
Yeah, from 6 to midnight. Just, I mean, absolutely no stop. And then Monday is going to be just as crazy. So
Yeah.
this will be fun. This will be fun. We've got a lot going on. And then my plan was Monday, before we started doing some of this other stuff, my plan was Monday to turn on all the lights and all the heaters and the heat mats and the heat tape. We have, over 750 enclosures here at Supreme Gecko, and everything is brumating right now. Everything is cooling down. So we probably won't start everything up Monday. We'll probably start it up Wednesday, but it's going to be fun. I've been waiting. I've been asleep for 2 months waiting for these animals to wake up and get ready for breeding. So it's going to be crazy this next week.
Oh, yeah.
And it won't stop this year. This year is full of surprises, I'm sure. Speaking of surprises, I don't know if this is speaking of surprises, but we have a special guest. I saw Jeff on another show, Ghouls and Geckos. Jason, one of our guests that we had a couple of weeks ago, has a wonderful, wonderful podcast, the Gecko Exchange podcast. And Jeff was on there and had a great, great presentation. And we talked about it. And thank you very much, Frank, for sharing those links. That's what we want. So we worked it out so Jeff could join us tonight. And we're going to talk about leopard geckos. Leopard geckos. It's kind of a lost art, I feel. There's pockets of keepers that are doing a great job with leopard geckos. And we're seeing some different things going on. I think it's kind of rejuvenated. So the whole leopard gecko community and the hobby itself. So kind of exciting. We're doing some leopard geckos, but nothing like Jeff is doing. So let's bring him on.
That was record time.
Hey, not too bad. Hey, Jeff, how are you doing?
I'm great. How are you guys doing tonight?
We are doing well. We are doing well. This is kind of our nap time before the weekend, so this is okay. So
when you can get a nap in any time, that's the great thing.
I can get a nap driving a car, so I'm pretty good at that, right?
Because I'm driving.
I take them as I can get them. Thank you very much for joining us tonight. I really think that this is going to be a fun show. You're doing some special things. I just saw an unboxing that you did today. And we're going to talk about your animals in just a minute, but tell the folks a little bit about yourself, about your family, your hobbies, your business. Tell us the non-gecko stuff, if you don't mind.
Okay. Yeah, sure. Like I said, everybody knows my name is Jeffrey Knapp. I live in Grove City, Ohio. It's a suburb of Columbus. So I've basically been here all my life. I have a wife and 2 kids. I've got a son that'll be 9 years old in June, but he thinks he's 15.
Of course.
And then a daughter that's 7 years old. And they're pride and joy in my life. Very busy with their extracurriculars along with what I have going on. I'm also in the HR world. I work for the Ohio State University Wexner Medical Center.
All of our favorite department, HR. So now, okay, I've got to write down the words that I can't say.
Well, those are, you can say them, but I don't know if they're going to be, it depends if it's written in our policy, if you can say it or not. But yeah, other than that, I also am involved also with my son's travel baseball team, and they've been practicing all winter because their season kicks off at the beginning of April. So it's going to be a very busy time over here outside of, taking care of all the wonderful animals.
Outstanding. Are you a baseball fan?
I am a Cincinnati Reds fan.
Oh, I was thinking maybe the Guardians, Cincinnati Reds.
Yeah, I can't now. Don't get me wrong. I did root for Cleveland when they made it to the World Series a few years back, but I just can't. I can't bring myself not to call them the Indians.
Let's see, Cleveland. Who did they play in the World Series? Was it that Chicago team?
Yeah, yeah. It had a bear on the logo.
Nanette can testify. I've been a Cubs fan. I'm 65, so I've been a Cubs fan for 60 years.
Mhm.
I can go back and remember watching games with my mom. And when the Cubs made that final out, and no offense to Cleveland, and great team and great players there, but when they made that first out, that was like, okay, I've got to count my wedding and the three boys. And that would be my fifth best moment in my life. It was a thrill. It really was.
It was something. I was, watching that series, and when Cleveland was up 3-1, I was like, oh, I think they're going to actually win one. And then it just fell apart from that point on.
The rain started and the whole game changed. But you're following a great team. Cincinnati is such a great historical team. One of my favorite players, Pete Rose from Cincinnati, no matter if you believe or what, great player.
Absolutely. That guy, he was what you would, if you ever was dreaming about to become a baseball player, that's somebody that you would want to basically idolize yourself after, especially the way he played on the field.
Yes. What position does your son play?
Well, right now, they're just kind of once they're able to, because they've been in an indoor hitting facility since it's been so cold up. The first part of March, they're going to start rotating people around to certain positions, and then by the time the season starts on the 12th of April, everybody's position should be locked down at that point in time.
Nice. Traveling baseball, that's some time. That's a lot of time.
38 games.
Are you kidding?
Wow.
Holy cow.
I've got to ask.
38 games for an almost 9-year-old.
That's nuts. How far
since he's the age group they have, about an hour. I think they said the furthest will be about an hour and a half for that age group for travel.
That's not terrible. That's not bad. As long as it's
but
not
the older they get.
Good call. Good point.
Right.
Really good point.
Yeah.
So a lot there to keep you busy. So how did you find time to get into reptiles?
Funny story. I had, a few reptiles growing up as a kid. I was one that was always going out, where we lived, there was a little creek down by our house, and I was always going down there and grabbing gardener snakes and bringing them back into the house, and, frogs and, anything I could find. And then when I was, I think 7 or 8, I got my first veiled chameleon, and I had that for a while. And then I kind of got out of reptiles. And then about 2023, me and my son were in a pet store, and he happened to come across a leopard gecko in there. And he was just saying how cool these were, and I'd like to have one, and this and that. And I was like, well, I said, I'll tell you what. I said, I'll find, a breeder in the area, and we'll, see what I can do. So jumped online, and there's a gentleman, and you may know him. He's known actually quite well. He's been in it for a long time. Joe Yingling at Lake Erie Leopard Geckos up in Sandusky. And I was talking to him and ended up getting a gecko for my son from him. And then afterwards, we just kept talking. And he asked me, he goes, have you ever thought about getting into breeding? And I'm like, well, I said, I love reptiles. I said, but I don't know where I'm going to find the time to be able to go ahead and do this. And we just kept, the more and more we kept talking, the more and more I got interested. So I started doing research and ended up purchasing a few breeders from him. And the rest of it's pretty much history.
Where did you do your research? Were you talking to other hobbyists? Were you going online?
I was talking to him mostly, and then he recommended me to talk to a few other breeders just to, kind of get a different opinion on certain things. And then I would get online, and I went to where I got a lot of information from about leopard geckos and how to keep them and so on and so forth, was the Reptifiles website.
Perfect. Yeah.
Yeah. And she really goes into details of a lot of animals. And I just basically took all that information down and, just kept on talking to Joe, and I acquired some animals from him, and off we went.
I like that Reptifiles site it takes you really, it does a great job taking you a certain direction and a certain distance with any of these animals. We have an event that we call the 12 Supreme Days of Christmas, and we have Reptifiles and a couple of other key people in the hobby that share information about different animals, exotic pet decor, series cards, creature care cards, and great information. Now, I think the important thing here is, and this is super cool, is that you then had a kind of a mentor in Joe that you could take that information that you built this base for and then take it the next step, because Joe does all kinds of animals, right?
He's been in, I can't tell you how many years he's been doing just leopard geckos alone. I think that pretty much is what his main focus is on now. But he did snakes for a long period of time, and there were some other reptiles that he did too. But now he mostly focuses on the leopard gecko aspect of it. And I can tell you from the animals that I acquired from him, last year was my first really big breeding season with those two. And actually I'm using both of them again this year, since they recovered last year very well and got back up to the weight they needed to be at. They were very good producers for first year geckos. I can't complain about anything that they turned out.
Now, did you talk to Joe and say, I'm kind of interested in this, I'm kind of interested in that, as far as morphs and colors? And how did you kind of decide the path that you were going to go on?
He asked me that right off the bat, what I was interested in. And I was like,
Perfect.
well, I said, I've always been one that loves a lot of bold, bright, striking colors. It's anything with bold stripes, really high color contrast that really brings out those stripings on those animals. I really started working with. So I work, with tangerines, the tangerine line, tangerine tornadoes, anything that has bold stripe and extreme bold in them as well. And even the clowns. I'm actually working with a project this year with some of the clowns that I have, out crossing them to the other geckos that I acquired along the way. So I'm a really high contrast, high pattern type of person when it comes to those animals.
Yeah, I don't think you can go wrong. When I started with way back with leopard geckos and crested geckos, the very first animal that I wanted to get for crested geckos was a red, because I knew that if I put a red animal on the table, it's going to shine and people will be drawn, and I can talk about it. And seeing the unboxing that you did today, I wish I could show the video, but that animal was beautiful, just absolutely beautiful. The orange on that animal was fantastic.
And the funny thing was, that animal was still in shed.
Oh, really?
A little bit. Yes. It was still a little bit, as Mike, from Malave Gecko, who I got that from, he goes, yeah, he said, you're getting a gecko that's opaque. He said, so when you see an animal that looks that good going through shed, he said, just imagine what that animal is going to look like when that shed comes off. And the genetics in her are very good. I don't know if you've heard of the Bengal line of leopard gecko.
A little bit, I'll be very honest, in the last probably 6 or 7 years, I've focused more on the rarer geckos, the small weirdo geckos, keeping our crested gecko population going, and really working more with our cresteds. our leopard geckos have stayed just exactly the same, and I really haven't followed and kept up, and that's my fault, not kept up with the different morphs that are out there. So I know the names, but I'm not, knee deep into the details of how you make them.
Yeah, the Bengal line was started, if I'm not mistaken, by Rudy at, I think it's Bold and Bright, I think is his name. He started that line a few years back, and everybody now seems to be working with it because the patterning that it creates on a gecko, like the dark lines are just like that much darker. It just enhances everything that you put certain animals to.
Is there any thought in the hobby, the people that are working with the Bengal, um, are there any thoughts that it's a different morph, a very specific morph? And in my mind, right away I go to something, and not that I'm saying that it's this kind of a morph, but I look at the enigmas or the white and yellows, something like that, where it's very distinctive that can be bred into animals, that those outstanding colors.
Yeah. I would consider it more of a line than a morph. Okay. Somebody that's been in it longer than me and who's worked with them longer than me, they may be able to say something different. But I consider it more of a line than a morph.
Okay. It's hard, again, for me to keep up with all of them, because it seems like right now it's like baseball cards. There's just so many different sets of baseball cards. At some point, I give up. I can't keep 783 different versions of one player.
I'm still learning, so it's like there's a lot of stuff out there that I don't know, and that's why I have to rely on with a lot of breeders that I stay in contact with to talk about these things, because they know a lot more about this stuff than I do, since I'm fairly new. So I'm one that is always taking notes. I have a journal that I write in constantly to, about certain things or certain pairings that I did. I'm kind of a nerd when it comes to data and writing things down. So I can't help myself.
You're going to have to maybe try a spreadsheet in the future. I have to say spreadsheet at least one time.
I do have one.
Funny thing is, and I'm kind of breaking off topic. I'll get back on topic in just a second. I tend to do this too much, but I've recently gone over to a product called Notion for note taking, and it is, oh my gosh, amazing. It's spreadsheets plus 4 or 5 degrees further, and I just love it. But I like spreadsheets for raw data, and something like lineage and hatch dates and stuff like that. A spreadsheet is just perfect for.
Yeah. And that's what I have. I have a spreadsheet that has all the previous things I did last year, all the pairings, how the eggs came out, what they were incubated at. If eggs didn't turn out well, I would notate that in there, and who was paired with who, what their genetic traits were. And then at the end of the year, I took how many eggs were laid compared to the ones that hatched. And then I'd put a percentage out there because I only did 2 females last year. I didn't want to go gangbusters the first year. I just kind of wanted to get a feel of how everything would go throughout a whole breeding season. So I only did the 2 females last year. And this year I've bumped that up to 5.
So tell us the morphs that you're working with currently, and how did you do last year?
Last year I didn't do too bad. One of the pairings that I did was a Bengal Bold cross that I got from Mike at Malave Geckos, and I paired that to a Firebold, the original Firebold that I got from Joe. And their babies, she ended up laying for a first-year breeder, because I always wait, till they're at least 1.5 years old before I'll breed the female, because at that point in time, I know she's mature enough, she should be ready to go at that point in time. So I give her that extra time. So she laid 16 eggs last year, and 13 of them hatched, and the other 3 weren't bad eggs. It was just where I messed up on the medium when I was incubating them.
And if you say that you're a perfect breeder and you get it all right all the time, I'm going to call you out and I'm going to call BS on you. We all do it. We all do it. I'll say personally, last year was a horrendous year for us, bad wise, as far as, banded geckos and our Picta, Periodor Picta. We just had a horrendously bad year because of a couple of things I did. And you know what? You go through it, you beat yourself up for a day, you forgiveness, and you just move on and you learn, right?
Yeah, and the funny thing is the 3 that I lost, it's, when you get that through in your brain, when you're thinking, it's like, okay, I've got everything down. I put the medium in, and then once you put it in there and stuff starts going south, and you start thinking, oh, you know what? I didn't squeeze enough water out of the medium on these, but over here I did something totally different, and that was perfect.
What kind of, I'm kind of curious, what kind of medium were you using to hatch the eggs?
Well, what I was using before I got trying out your new Supreme hatch, before I was using a mixture of vermiculite and perlite. And then I used that for the 3 eggs that I lost. And then after those 3 eggs that I lost, because they were actually the first 3 that I actually incubated. And after that, I was like, you know what? I'm going to go ahead and take the perlite out and just leave vermiculite in there, but just make sure there's no water, dripping once I squeeze it out and put it into the actual cup. And when I made the switch to vermiculite, I didn't have that problem no more.
I get asked a lot. I think people feel, since we've been in the hobby for so long and we've done so many bad things, you just learn. People ask me, well, what kind of medium do you use? And I suggest the Supreme Hatch material. But really, I'll be very frank and honest that all of these materials, for the most part, will work. All of the materials will work as long as you have a very, 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 very good understanding of moisture content and you know how to manage it and monitor it. They'll all work. The thing with and I'm not trying to plug, it's just that high fired clay material that Pangea and Rapashi and I sell, and probably other sites. Hey, DEA, thanks for joining us, Andrew. It's that it makes it so easy. You don't have to, okay, is it wet enough? Did I put too much water in there? Doesn't matter. You don't care. It goes light, it goes dark, and if it goes light again, add some water. So that's why I think a lot of the hobbyists have moved over to that material, because it just makes it so easy, right? It really does.
Yeah, it just, when I put that in, because the last eggs that were just laid, I went ahead and used your hatch material. And the funny thing was, when I watched your one video about how to, put the water in, drain it out, that type of thing, I was like, oh my God, it sounds like Rice Krispies when you put water in here. The snap, crackle, and pop. Yeah, exactly. I
can hear it. It's talking to me.
Yeah, but the way to drain it off, but what I really like about it is once you drained all the water off, put the eggs in, it gives you that really nice dark brown color to where hey, this is moist and it's going to, do what it needs to do. And I can actually see it, where the other, I had a hard time seeing if I put enough, if there was enough water in there, if it was going to last a certain amount of time. It almost takes out the guesswork.
Yes. And people will talk about, oh, my eggs are too dry and they're starting to crinkle. That's not the end of the world. You can add a little bit of water to the medium. The problem is that a lot of people start this hobby out. I fear, because I've talked to so many people about it, they'll start the hobby out and they'll start incubating and they'll make the medium too wet. And because of that, the eggs will swell up. They'll absorb all that water. Now you have ballpark Franks that just aren't going to. They're not going to hatch.
No.
So and it's not this very limited line right here. It's pretty extensive. They're very tolerant. But I tell you what, you cross over to the too wet side, and you're done for. If too dry, you can kind of compensate a little bit if you find it quick enough. But
You're using the forbidden word tonight too much.
I did, and Jeff used moist too. Everybody's saying don't use moist, so that's one of my
forbidden
bad
word.
trademarks of saying it too much.
That's a word I've used forever, and it's like, to me, moist sounds better than damp. So it's it's whatever you want to use. But no, getting back to the eggs with not enough water, there was a couple eggs that I went through last year that started to through the process started to dent a little bit. So I got with one of my breeders that I knew, and I'm like, hey, these eggs aren't ready to hatch yet. What's going on with this denting issue? And they're like, oh yeah, that just means that your medium is kind of drying out. You just need to add some more water in it and give it about a day or so, and them dents will pop right back out. And sure enough, they did.
No panic. No.
No.
Oh my gosh, you're losing. Yeah, you better. They're denting a little bit. Add some water.
Yeah. Well, and I also noticed too that when they get ready to hatch, and I saw maybe 3 or 4 do this last year, the day before they hatch, they actually started to dent on the one side.
Oh,
and
interesting.
Yes, I don't know if that has anything to do with it or not, or maybe it was just a an out of the blue type of thing. But I had a few of them do that a day before they hatched, and all of them had a little dentation going on the other side.
Very cool.
Angie's gagging.
Yeah, why is Angie gagging?
At the word. She can't handle that word.
She can't. So now I've got to say it at least 12 or 13 more times. Write a note. Say moist at least 10 more times. When you hatched out the babies, were you privileged enough? Were you blessed enough to be there as they were kind of, not when they initially came out of the egg, but kind of still, kind of nosing out and making their way out of the egg? Have you seen that yet?
I saw one out of the how many did I between the two females? Out of the 22 that hatched, I saw one that was poking its nose out, and I basically watched the whole entire thing. And it probably took, I don't know, maybe 30, 35 minutes to complete the process. And that was the coolest thing. And I remember telling my wife about it, and she's like, did you get it on video? I'm like, no.
It was too exciting to watch.
Exactly.
I've seen it over and over, and not once does the thought come to mind, nope. Oh, I better go grab my camera. It's like, oh, this is so cool. This is what I do this for. Oh my gosh, look how cute this guy is.
That was really cool how it worked to get itself out of there. And it's like, I'm sitting there thinking like, okay, it took you 30, 35 minutes to get out of there. And that 30, 35 minutes was a struggle for that little thing, trying to work to get out of there.
Yes. What did you get? So did you get for the eggs that hatched out? Did you get what you were expecting?
Pretty much. Actually, I probably got a little bit more than what I was expecting. I didn't have, like I said, a lot of the pairings I did last year were mostly crosses. They weren't like Firebolt to Firebolt or, Tangerine to well, I kind of was like the other pairing I did. The one other female I got from Joe, she was a Tangerine, Clown G, and a Blood Amarine mix. And I paired her to a 100% original line Tangerine Tornado that I got from Kyle Frost. And he also was 66% het for Tremper. So I was hoping with the other girl, the other female she was a no-known het. So she wasn't throwing, any albinos or anything like that from previously before, I got them from Joe. And I was hoping maybe, maybe I get an albino out of all this, which I didn't, which is fine, because the one picture I sent you of the one female that came out of that pairing.
Nice.
Yeah. The colors, the babies, their orange was just very, very orange, and it almost had like a red hue to it as well. And those geckos, I sold them faster than the other ones that I had, because everybody's like, I have to have that color. That color is just off the charts crazy. And they basically sold themselves. But I can tell you, tangerines are back in the leopard gecko world for selling again.
I hope so. I really do. And I think the white and yellow brought a lot to the hobby. Um, I don't know. For me, I'm going to say for me, everybody has a different. Oh my gosh, this is my favorite leopard gecko. Everybody's different. For me, somebody posted, and I don't know who it was. I'll think about it like after the show ends, 5 minutes after.
2:00 in the morning.
2 o'clock in the morning while I'm flipping through TikTok.
You'll wake me up to tell me.
Oh, here's a picture. See, Nanette, there it is right there. Go to sleep, Wally. Somebody
That's not
posted
what I'm gonna
recently
say.
the whole body was orange,
Uh-huh.
not a spot, and the whole tail was a deep carrot orange. And I mean the whole tail. And I was kind of thinking this is what we as a hobby, in my opinion, only, whether it matters or not, in my opinion, that's what we should be striving for, and more color, and fill it all in with that color and make it as vibrant as possible. That's my thought.
Yeah, that's what the pairings I have going this year. If everything turns out, because you always think ahead to what you're going to pair with, look at the genetics, and you're like, wow, if I'm pairing this with this, and you always want to daydream of what those things are going to come out of the egg looking like. And I know a leopard gecko baby, will change its colors multiple times up until it's a year old. So a lot of people ask me, they're like, man, that coloring on that gecko when it was a baby, is it still going to be that color? I'm like, that's what we strive for. If we could get the leopard gecko baby to hold that color all the way through adulthood, I said, that would be a wonderful thing. But that's very difficult to do. I said, so I always tell customers that will ask availability from me, and I usually will not make a gecko available until they're at least 25 grams, because then I know it's well established. I'm not going to have to worry about it going to a new home, because occasionally they will go off food, adjust into a new environment, and I'm not going to have to worry if that gecko's at that weight. But people are sometimes wanting to buy them when they're like 15, 16 grams. And I'm like, I don't feel comfortable selling a gecko that at that weight. I won't do it. I'm not saying the gecko won't thrive. I just don't feel comfortable in doing it. And I also inform them that gecko that you see with that color or that pattern, that's probably not what you're going to get when it gets to being an adult. And yes, I don't want you being disappointed buying something at that age thinking it's going to be like that when it turns a year old.
Exactly. There's so many geckos that are like that. We sell something. We're fortunate enough to work with a gecko called Pachydaktylus oreophilus. That's a mouthful.
Oh.
Oreophilus, their bodies are jet black, just tuxedo black, and they have white upper body and lower body, and it looks like an Oreo,
They're beautiful.
Except reversed. Now that I just think of that. Anyways, they're just beautiful. And we'll put some babies on the table for show to show people. And then we'll bring pairs or adults. And people will look at the babies and go, oh my God, that's so cool. Do they stay like that? And I'll go, no, they're kind of, when they're adults, they're kind of gray. So as babies, they're in the crevices of the rocks, so they have to be real dark. And as adults, they're right on top of the gray rocks, and they can be gray to match in. So they're kind of ugly a little bit, but as babies, they're just phenomenal. Many geckos are like that.
And then people walk away and don't buy them.
Yeah. Oh, it's going to look like that.
I don't want it.
Yeah, I don't want that now.
I don't want it now.
Thanks for letting me know.
Yeah, I'm glad I know now.
Well, see, at the shows, I have a like a video screen that I bring, and it's got all of pictures that I've taken, some videos on there. When people come across my tables, they can watch. And I have all the pictures of babies hatching out, and pictures of the babies at what they look like as babies, and then I'll show them what they look like as an adult. And every time people will walk by and they're like, that just blows my mind how different they become from, let's say, 3 months old up until a year old. It's just like they can't fathom that it changes that much.
And I feel some of them get colors that are a little bit more washed out. You know, some of the tangerines eventually 4, 5, 6 years old, and they'll kind of wash out a little bit. But some of the, you know, like reverse stripes, sometimes they'll get better and better. Red reverse stripes especially will get to be a really, really nice animal. Do you think, and maybe you know, maybe you don't, but do you think that that color, that orange color that you were seeing from your hatchlings, was that from the tornado?
Yes. Yeah, the tornado, what I've noticed, and this is just my experience, some other ones that other keepers have, breeders have, may do something totally different. But what I've noticed with the tangerine tornado, it really amps up. If you pair it to another animal that has some sort of tangerine in it, it just amplifies that color.
Interesting.
Yeah.
We have Gecko Man here too. He does a lot of leopard geckos. Jennifer Cook does leopard geckos. Anybody else have that experience? The reason I ask is because about 4 years ago or so, before that, for probably 4 or 5 years, I was kind of breeding maybe, 4 or 5 pairs a year. And then I saw a tornado on somebody's table and I bought a pair, and I fell in love with leopard geckos again because of that. I'll say red orange color. It wasn't orange; it was red orange, and just so vibrant.
It's like a and I may be wrong in saying this, but it almost gives off a vibe of like it's like a hypo type color that it's throwing off, because that picture that I sent you of that female, she was born last July and she'll be a year old this coming July, and her colors are getting better. Like her colors are like turning almost like a reddish hue, and it gives off like this background, almost like bright orangey fluorescent, like, coloring to her. That's the only way I know how to explain it. Yeah, that one there. And it's in person, because I had the lighting off a little bit there too, because I use a light box and I'm still trying to figure out the light setting on that thing. But to see her in person, where it looks almost like yellowish there between that one band and the other color, that is more of a reddish hue, and that band is almost like a really bright orange.
Wow. It's so different than a regular tangerine. It really, in my mind, at least, I feel that it's a different color.
Yeah. And that patterning on her head, because her mother has clown G in her, and that pattern on her head is more of a clownish type. If you look at a normal clown leopard gecko, they'll have like that spotting on top of the head like that. So I think the mother passed on her clown G trait, because the other, the male, basically her hatchmate, her brother, doesn't have that speckling on top of his head. It's just solid orange.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's just solid orange.
What do you think of the spots compared to a solid orange?
I kind of like the spotting. I really do. The clowns, they're very unique. The spotting pattern on those animals, I like it. There's a lot of people are like, well, they're just spots. I'm like, yeah, but it like, it gives it character. It's like, it's different than your normal just flat color, orange or black or whatever. It just gives some personality to it.
I can see what you're saying. It really does. When I guess I'm comparing like the crested gecko situation, where Dalmatians are very, very distinctive. In some of the super Dalmatians, they look very, very different, and it gives the animal a lot of character. For me, being as old as I am, being as experienced as I am, I go back to, the time when, the purpose of breeding the tangerines, the super hypo tangerine carrot tail, was to get all the spots out. So I'm still stuck in that mode, unfortunately, and I'm being stubborn here, but I absolutely see what you say about the spots, and that's very, very popular right now. Skittles, clowns.
Yep.
Yeah, they're all in the hobby, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, the one thing about clowns do have a very good trait to them, especially with the spotting and some of the other color patterns, because sometimes with a clown, you'll get like, it'll be all yellow and then it'll have this like fire red stripe, right up its back or across its back. But what I've heard, and I haven't experienced this yet because I haven't worked with them long enough, it seems like the clowns, as they age, they lose a lot of that type of patterning when they get older.
Interesting.
Yeah, they're not as vibrant as what they are when they're younger.
That reminds me, and Leopard Gecko folks in the chat here, let me know if this holds true. That reminds me of like a reverse stripe or a red stripe, where year and a half old before they start breeding, that's just such a vibrant stripe. And then after about 4 or 5 years, I think this was a bold stripe. I think it had the bold stripe. Let me go back to my spreadsheet. Yeah, it was a bold stripe.
Yeah.
Yeah. Spreadsheet. So Jennifer is saying, I think here we go. Juan is saying there's a red Leo, but I can't remember the morph name. I think it's Inferno. Perfect red. And then Jennifer's saying it's the Inferno line.
Yeah, I do have a clown that is, it's 100. It came from I don't know if you know who Thomas at Tucson's Finest Leos. I don't know if you've ever heard of him.
No, I haven't.
He's a very good breeder out there as far as leopard geckos are concerned. I got a original line clown from him that also had Inferno in the clown. And what that Inferno, and hopefully I find this out to be true, but the female I'm waiting to pair him with still hasn't ovulated yet. So if you take a clown or anything with Inferno on it or in the actual animal and you pair it to a tangerine, I guess the Inferno trait will bring out that tangerine like vibrant like fire, from what I've been told.
Really?
Yes.
What happens, and maybe you know, but what happens if you go Inferno to an Inferno?
If I had to take it, I would probably say if you did Inferno to Inferno, I don't know if it would enhance the Inferno trait at all, but it could. It may maybe make that coloring that was the yellow and the red, maybe a brighter yellow and a red. I'm not too sure, but I wasn't going to pair it with the clown female that I had when I found out it really enhances tangerine colors. So that's why I'm going to pair it to my tangerine female to see how that Inferno trait actually works.
Exciting. Very exciting. Now
it's almost like you got to play mad scientist.
Well, absolutely. And again, now that we have 863 different leopard gecko morphs out there, it's not so much like a crapshoot. It's just so many options are out there, and it seems like they're coming up with new options all the time. New idiosyncrasies, just little tiny differences, eye colors, or I don't know. It's just crazy. So the collection that you have right now, you said that you had a number of babies. I think you said 22, 23. How many of those were holdbacks, and how many did you sell?
Out of the 23 babies that I had, I held back 6 and the rest of them sold.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
And I think that's the way that you should do it. Keep back the handful that are really, really nice. You can always sell them later, and play with those and see what you get.
Exactly. And the pairing that, because I want the pairing that I did between the Firebold and the Bengal Bold cross male that I had, he has traits of, he's got tangerine in him, he's got bold stripe, and extreme bold in him. So some of the babies that they kicked out had a very prominent stripe right down the back, and the black wasn't solid from the head down to where the base of the tail starts, but there wasn't much breakup in that. So I held back a few of those to see if I could get that solid black stripe from its head down to its tail, because right in the middle of that, when that animal sheds between the black sides, that yellow almost looks like highlighter yellow. It, like, you could turn the lights off and you probably would see the yellow on that animal. It was just, it's just crazy how those babies turned out. And those were just first generation too.
It sounds like you have a plan. It sounds
Yes.
like, it sounds like you weren't me the first 2 or 3 years that I was breeding leopard geckos. I didn't have all the morphs that we have, or different designs that we have now. But I go back to the biggest excitement after working with leopard geckos for 2 or 3 years was the Max Snow coming out. That was the big one. So that's how long ago that was. But I didn't have any plans whatsoever. It was like, I just want more of these orange babies. Didn't really get into the reverse stripe, red reverse and all until probably 3 or 4 years. And then I started whittling it down, but it sounds like you have a plan. Do you see kind of the direction that you're going in? And do you give yourself like a, next year, do you give yourself in 5 years, this is where I want to be?
With what I've laid out, because there's a lot of stuff that flows through my head on an everyday basis thinking about these animals. From what I produced this year out of that group pairing, I wanted the Bengal patterning. I wanted that stripe down the back. So that's what I'm going to try to refine out of what I kept back. So these are first generation. So what I'm going to do is create an F2 and then see how predominant that black still stays down their back. And if I get it really close and I think an F3 generation will finally solidify that, then I'll go ahead and do an F3. But if I do the F2 and it stays that way, then I can say, hey, this is the stripe that I want. And now maybe I want to add some coloring to it. Then I'll think about something to pair it with on an outcross.
So there's the hard part. You're talking about a year or two and walking, this process down the line. But, and these Gex can testify to this. Sometimes it's not 2 years. Sometimes it's not 3 years. I remember Steve Sykes, geckos, etc., beautiful leopard geckos and all kinds of beautiful animals. But Steve, I remember him being on a podcast and walking through one of the morphs he was trying to prove out. And he said he didn't prove it out until the 7th year. That's 7 years to prove this animal out. And every year it was like, nope, 100 babies, nothing. 100 babies, nothing. And then he finally hit it on the 7th year.
Yeah.
That's crazy. So I guess I'm saying, the hard part is, how many do you hold back to try to hit that magic combination? And I'm sure the snake people see this every single day,
Yeah, I will. Like I said, I have 2 theories on that. Is if it takes me more than a certain amount, like, I always will cross the threshold of, okay, it's close to where I want it. I'm going to try to refine it to see if every time I, breed these animals together, it's going to pop out what I exactly want. And then on the other hand, I always think that, well, I don't want to take it too far where it starts, the geckos start hatching out with neurological neurological issues and deformities and that type of stuff. I never want to jeopardize an animal just to say, hey, I got this black stripe down here and it does this, but guess what? My gecko may not be able to walk from here to there because of I did it for too long.
Yeah. And we're not going to go too deep into this, but we've obviously seen over the last 10 years a couple of problems. I was involved in the Enigma projects, and I had a male, and I was producing Enigmas. Wally, don't you ever see any neurological problems? And I was honest with people, and I said, out of maybe 50 babies, I've seen one or two. So I don't think I don't know what it is, but I don't think, and I feel terrible saying this now, but I told people, I don't think, this is something that's so serious.
Right.
But 1 out of 50 is still bad enough.
Yeah.
And it was quick after that, they were gone. Couldn't deal with that. And we've seen it with, the several of the other animals, new morphs have popped up.
Right.
It's hard. You just have to kind of watch.
Exactly. Well, it's just like the Black Knight morph. Some of those lines have been, line bred for several generations. But what I like, because people will come to my table and like, do you have any Black Knights or work with Black Knights? I said, personally, I haven't yet. I said, if I ever do, I said, a lot of breeders are producing some knockout Black Knight crosses to where they're crossing it into other animals, but it's keeping that Black Knight lineage, but it's introducing fresh blood to it. And there's nothing wrong with an all black animal. I love the way it looks, but some of these crosses that they're doing, they're spectacular what they're out crossing them to. And they're not running into issues of the gecko's too small, or they're having a hard time getting up to weight, or their breeding is not as good. They're laying infertiles more than fertile eggs. The crosses, it just seems like it's pumped extra, an extra oomph to all these other geckos, and it's really looking good.
I think you're right. And I think that there's more to come, especially, I think you said, or somebody said in the chat, there seems to be a renaissance of some of these different color forms of leopard geckos. I've got to ask you, you've grown your collection quite a bit in the last couple of years. How are you keeping your animals? Are you doing racks? Are you doing, I don't want to say bioactives, but are you doing a different, rather than paper towel? How are you keeping your animals? And do you have them in individual racks or individual enclosures?
Basically, I have all of my leopard geckos in rack systems. Other than my son's, I set his up in a big 36 by 18 by 18 bioactive, and that gecko absolutely loves it. Loves it. But no, all of them are in racks. I keep my babies in a 6-quart tub on paper towel, and I basically will grow them up until they're about, I would say about 15 grams. And then I'll move them into a 12-quart tub. And then after that, once they get up to an adult, depending on if I'm going to keep it in my breeder system or if it's going to be, available for sale, then I've got a 28-quart tub I can put the adults in. But what I'm going to try, I don't know if it's going to be this year or next year. I'm kind of like testing it right now, is actually adding like a bioactive substrate to my tubs to give them a more naturalistic environment than just, a Reptisorb liner.
I mentioned earlier that I watch so much video downstairs, or listen to video. I'm not watching video when I'm cleaning geckos.
You better not be.
Yeah, that's all I do 8 hours a day, is just sit, on the computer and on my phone watching videos.
You run downstairs 20 minutes before I get here.
God, hiding from you. But today, somebody was talking about, how much we changed over the last 15, 20 years. Especially with substrates with leopard geckos. 20 years ago, God help you, God help you if you commented that you had your animals over sand
Oh,
or
yes.
any substrate whatsoever. And, you know, anybody getting into the hobby at that time was like, oh, sand, terrible, and substrate terrible. And so I think that, you know, I really think that there's, and we talked about this a little bit before,
Yeah.
I really think that it's not the substrate necessarily. You know, you can have bad substrate,
Right.
obviously, that's not good for the animals, like a calcium sand.
Mm-hmm.
But if it's a well-packed substrate and you have your people, please, two things: temperatures. If your temperatures are good, and if you have a lick like a mealworm cup or something with some calcium in there, so that they can take in the minerals that they need that way, substrate shouldn't really be an issue. You know, looking at nature, you know.
Yeah, because you know, you look at where they come from. You know, they come from a very arid environment over there in Pakistan and Afghanistan, and they're living in rock crevices, and you know they're more like a communal animal over there. If you see videos of leopard geckos, you pull up a rock or go into whatever, and you see a bunch of them, you know, living amongst each other. But yeah, you know, out there they're dealing with nothing but substrate. So to survive, they're going to have to eat bugs that are on that substrate. So, you know, the calcium sand I can see. But I do agree with you. I think the health of the animal determines that a lot. If something like impaction issues or anything like that, because like I said, my son's gecko that I have on bioactive, I use that Terra Sahara from the Bio Dude, and he's approaching, he'll be what, 3 years old this June, and I've never had any issues with him in that environment because you know, when I
well.
Absolutely. And he's thriving like crazy. He is more like I said, when he comes out at night, he is all over that enclosure, and he is very active. And when I feed, you know, every feeding that I do, I always dust with my vitamin calcium mix. And then they also have like a little bottle cap in each one of their enclosures of calcium, to where if they need it, they can go over and lick it up. And then people will ask me, well, aren't you worried about vitamin D3 overdose? I said, no, I'm not, because the gecko's body is going to tell them how much calcium they're going to need anyways.
Right.
And exactly. So for vitamin 3 overdose, they would have to eat the whole 6-ounce bottle of the Rapashi calcium that I give them, just to, you know, just to show anything. But I've never had an issue with keeping calcium at all times in my enclosure and something happening to that animal.
Frank is asking, are you also using the Bio Shot? I'm not familiar with that. Do you know what that is?
Yes, the Bio Shot, when I went bioactive, it is a pack from the Bio Dude. When you set up your enclosure and you put your substrate in, it's like a shot of like it takes your substrate and like supercharges it. That's the only way I can put it.
See when you're sick.
Yeah, for minerals and that type of stuff gets just put into that substrate. So when you put your isopods and springtails and all of that in there, that substrate just thrives.
It reminds me of it, and maybe this is a good example, maybe not, but it reminds me of I used to keep a lot of fish. So you wouldn't set up a fish tank and take tap water and fill up 10 gallons and then dump your fish right in. What you would want to do is take 5 gallons, but then take 5 gallons from another tank. So you're seeding, seeding, that tank with aerobic, anaerobic bacteria that can then cycle the tank that much quicker. Sounds like the same thing. And we do that for our isopods too. We won't set up a new enclosure for our isopods. We'll take some substrate from another existing isopod container and put it in there as a starter to kind of seed it.
Yeah, that substrate. I've told several people that has either bought off me or just asked me various questions at expos about what bioactive substrate to use. I send them straight to the Bio Dude and basically say the Terra Sahara for a leopard gecko. I said, the stuff is wonderful.
well recommended. I've been taking some notes, and I do this a lot on these shows, taking notes for myself. I have Kyle Frost's name in there. I'll be contacting
Okay.
him for those tornadoes.
Yeah.
Um,
Yes,
but
for the
also,
tangerine tornadoes, he does very good production and very high quality animals.
so you've kind of talked about your rack system. How
Mhm.
many enclosures do you have right now?
Oh, let me see here. I have let's see here. I have 112 quart tubs, which is basically I consider my grow out racks.
Wow,
Well, I
that was
kind of went
quick.
above and yeah, well, I kind of went above and beyond with some of the extra because, my wife asked me, she goes, well, why do you need 100? I'm like, well, I said, I'm one who likes to plan because I don't want to start breeding certain things. And like, I have to worry about running out of space. This way, I'm not going to run out of space because I know the number that I wanted to work with to begin with anyways.
Perfect.
So I
Perfect.
try to plan all that stuff out ahead of time. I have 6 breeder males and 6 breeder females that are in the V35 tub, which is a 28 quart tub basically. And then I have 60 or 65 6-quart tubs for the hatchlings
Wow. I
right
was
now.
going to
So
ask, this was kind of a loaded question. I was going to ask how much bigger, how does it expand? How big are you going to get? Sounds like you're already planning that out very well.
I always try to err on the side of caution. I've been like that. That's just the way my mind thinks sometimes is if I have stuff left over that I don't use, I don't care because I don't want to be up against the wall in case I do get a little bit bigger than what I'm thinking. I'll have the extra space. Um, Between breeders and babies, I want to keep it at any given time anywhere between my threshold is about 100, but
Okay.
150 would probably be my max that I would ever want to get to because the job that I have is very demanding and then family life on top of it with 2 young kids. I don't want to get to the point where I can't handle the geckos that I have and they start to suffer because then at that point in time, I wouldn't be able to live with myself if I'm bringing animals that never asked to come into this world and I can't take care of them because I have too many.
I tell my story just really super quick, but I went through a time at work about 7 or 8 years ago where I was super busy and Nanette had to take care of the animals for 2 years. But before that,
Mhm.
I was breeding a lot of leopard geckos, and at one point I think that we had probably 500 baby leopard geckos downstairs. And that at the end of that year, I sat down with my spreadsheet and I did my full goals for the next year. And I went, this is a job. I don't
Yeah.
want this to be a job. It's got to be fun. It's got to be fun. I'm selling all
Mhm.
these animals, but it's not fun. So that year we cut back from, I don't even know how many breeders that we had down to maybe 10 females ish. And we just slowed way down because, it wasn't, it was, I've got
have to
to,
feed,
I've
I
got
have
to
to
go
clean.
downstairs to
Yeah.
clean and feed instead of, I get to go downstairs and see if there's babies. And, and once you get to that, like you were saying, once you get to that threshold, you
Yeah.
have to take that step back and you have to say, am I doing what I really wanted to be doing 2 or 3 or 5 years ago?
Yeah, I don't want it to become a chore. I want to be able to wake up every single day, like you just said, and during hatching season, what am I going to go down there and open up, look in the incubator? What am I going to see this morning? And what's funny is when I'm cleaning in there, because I wake up super early since I work from home anyways, I'll get all the cleaning and all that done before I start work. And I'll sit there and clean out everybody's bins and hold the animals and this and that because I handle my leopards all the time because I want them to be socialized. So when I do sell them, I want that person to be able to hold them and not run away from them and hide and this and that. So I hold them start when they pop out of the egg and they're allowing me to hold them in my hand without them squawking at me when they're little babies. I start doing it at that age, and I'll sit and talk to every single one of them. And I remember one day I went upstairs and my wife looked at me and she goes, "You tell me you're down there for an hour and a half and you talk to them animals that full hour and a half?" I said, "Yes, I do, because I love every single one of them." I said, that's my happy place. When I go down and I'm doing that, it doesn't seem like a chore to me.
Speaking of your wife, you talked a little bit about your son and his leopard gecko. How involved is your family in your hobby slash business?
My wife, she loves to come down. She loves to see the new babies and hold a certain, certain females that she likes. But other than that, that's about as far as it goes. She's happy in what I do. She don't, no poop, nothing like that. She just wants to see the babies and hold them. Now, my son and daughter, my son's at that age to where he does come down for a little bit and he's curious about what's going on. But right now with baseball and everything else, that's more on his mind than reptiles. Same with my daughter, but they will come down and share time with me, and I'll, they'll hold them and I'll tell them what I'm doing. And they may even jump in for a little bit, but they pretty much, I get down there and I do my own thing, and, they're happy that, sometimes I think about it, I'm like, well, maybe they're just happy that I'm away from them for about an hour and a half and I'm not bothering them.
Put that darn phone away.
Exactly.
Yeah. You know what, Nanette, same for me.
Yeah, I know. It works for me when you're down there.
So yeah, if my kids ever got involved to where they really wanted to jump into this and really get involved, I would have no problem with that. But with me, I'm not going to, to like force them to go ahead and do something like that. If they want to help me out, that's fine. If not, I'm happy, I'm happy in the place that I'm at.
That's cool. And again, the vibe that I'm getting is that you're a hobbyist first, 1,000% over the business person.
Yes.
However, you did talk about sales, so I'm going to kind of veer off for just a second on the business end of things. How do you sell? What are your outlets? And I'm going to tie back in. I'm going to pull it back in. Your wife, do you think that she would ever get involved from the business end? And I say that, Jeff, because I think that we make a really good team. I clean the poop. I do the dirty work downstairs. But in Supreme Gecko, Nanette is invaluable because she handles a lot of the show stuff and the shipping stuff. And is that a possibility? And
she has expressed interest on that, especially with, me, it's going to grow with one of, the stuff that I want to do. It's going to get bigger than what it is now. So she is willing to help out if I really need her to help out with something, she goes, "I'll be there 100%. She goes, "Because I know you're the type of person who you've already got a plan figured out. You already know what you're going to do. You just go ahead and do it." And that's just me. And that's just the way I am. But she has helped out in some of the one bigger expo that I did here in Columbus. That was a 2-day expo. She helped out a lot with, she helped out a lot with customers. And, because some of those times where, you're trying to talk to some person and another person's coming up and looking at your table, and you may be selling to this person, getting their information, but then you don't want the person over here waiting forever because they're looking at something while you're dealing with this person. So she was able to jump in and alleviate a lot of that problem. So I think at some point in time, I think the more and more she gets around it, I think the more and more she'll be willing to get more involved.
Nice. Angie is saying Nanette does the icky work with the roaches.
And that's only because you're allergic to the frass.
Yeah.
Otherwise, I wouldn't be doing it.
No, my wife will not touch the roaches. She's good with the mealworms and all that, but she will not get near the dubia.
Why do you do the dubias? I mean, how do you tolerate dubias on you and stuff?
I don't.
Yeah, I don't.
I don't like it, but you can't do it.
We talked about business. We talked about reptile shows. Where do you sell your animals? Is it mostly at reptile shows? Do you morph market? I know you have the site.
Yes.
The site.
Yeah, I have my own personal website, and I try to keep that updated as much as possible, but there are some times where I do get busy and I'm not updating it the way I should, but I'm trying to get better at that because it's fairly new. I just started it this year. I do sell on Morph Market, but a lot of them I have sold has been through the expo circuit, because I love doing the expos. I love getting out there, talking to people, educating people. And that's one thing with me is you don't even have to buy anything from me. If you come up and you're asking about leopard geckos or whatever, I'll give you the whole lowdown of everything you want to know. And I'll even give them a care sheet at the end that basically shows what these animals need. If you're thinking about this in the future, here's a business card, here's a care sheet, a way to contact me. But I don't have problem talking to people. And I've had several customers come up and ask me, do I, do Max Snow or Black Knights or things that I don't have? I'll direct them over to the other gecko breeder that actually has those, because I won't try to take a sell away from somebody just because I want to sell you one of my animals when you're looking for a specific thing that this person over here has.
That's the sign of a true hobbyist in my mind. I can't say enough about that. That shows a lot of integrity, but it also shows, I guess the compassion for the hobby and what you're doing, and maybe I'll tie it in, the desire to teach the kids and teach the new hobbyists, and kind of bring them in and say, well, I don't have what you're looking for, but let's walk, you and I. Come on.
And I've walked them over. Yeah, I've walked them over to the table and introduce myself, and then introduce that person to the breeder there. And I just want to get people excited about leopard geckos again. And I can actually tell you, and this was told by a guy that really ranks up high in the hognose snake world, that was vending at that show, that he goes, the people that buy snakes from me, he goes, it's the first time I've actually seen somebody buy a snake from me and then go buy one of your geckos. He said, because snake people, he goes, usually keep the snake people, and that's it. And I probably sold, in the course of that weekend, I probably sold 9 geckos to snake people.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. Which I had no idea that snake people were like that, and he's like, they're a tough sell. And he said, whatever you did, you convinced him to buy another buy one of your animals outside of a snake.
Outstanding.
Yeah.
Angie is asking the question that Wally, being the bad host, never ever asked. So thank you, Angie. And next time you're sitting in this seat instead of me, maybe I missed it, but what does GTL stand for? GTL
stands for, and it's basically the 3 OG geckos that I got from Joe. My son's gecko that I got for him, my son wanted me to input him into the breeding pool with what I had. So his name is Godzilla. And then the 2 females that I have, one is Thelma and the other one is Louise. So Godzilla, when I introduced him to females, I think he got so used to his big enclosure. The last couple of seasons that I've tried to pair him up with somebody, he wants nothing to do with a female.
Ooh, really?
I will put the female in his enclosure and he will go up to her and lay right beside her.
Wow.
And do nothing.
So it's not like the female is forcing him out. Hey, no. I'm not ready here. It's like he's just like, let's just hang.
Yeah, she was. All of them, the 2 I put in there that I wanted to pair him up with, were ovulating like crazy, receptive like crazy, and they were doing their whole thing. She was rubbing up against him, licking him, laying next to him, and he just sat there and looked at her.
A little Netflix and chill without the chill.
Exactly. So he's still, like I said, that's where the GTL comes from. So I said, even though if he doesn't become a breeder, he's still one of the original ones that I started with.
Outstanding. I like that. I like the name. I like the, if I can show this, I'm going to get this off the screen and I'm going to jump over here and I'm going to share.
Censored, Frank said.
Was I just censored?
You were censored.
Yeah, I have it. Let me bring this up real quick.
I was
Thank
just
you for
going to
your
ask him to
patience.
move over to the side so we could see it.
see the backdrop? Yeah.
Yeah, never mind.
Yeah, so those are the three main geckos. So I had a gentleman that did this logo for me, and the top gecko is Louise, and then Godzilla is the one where you just see the head, and then Thelma is the one on the bottom.
Cool.
The thing that I like about this logo a lot
It's orange.
is, well, it's orange. Okay, we're done with
I like Halloween too. So
I love orange, but the bottom, it it looks like flames, like fire. The very
Yeah.
first thing you think of is fire. Love that.
Yeah, he did a
Very
really
cool
good.
gecko.
Yeah, because he was asking me when he designed my Leco. He said, "What were you thinking about?" I said, I said I want them. I want 3 of them incorporated in there, and I said, this is the name I want. I said, but I'm going to leave it up to your artistic talent to blow me away. And this is what he came back with.
Looks cool.
Yeah.
It also looks cool because the geckos and the wording all stand out the way that he did
Yeah.
this. The GTL does not blend into the orange of the geckos.
No.
Wonderful
No, he did a wonderful job, and I just wish I had that type of artistic talent to be able to do something like that.
I have none. I can copy.
No.
I have no creativity whatsoever.
No.
Very cool.
You want me to draw you something? I'll draw you a stick figure. But if you want to draw something else, I can't do it.
That's about me. I go to Fiverr and say, draw me a picture of a gecko.
Right.
Lots of information here. I've got tons of notes. Great educational information. If you could, we're going to end on this, and unless anybody else has any questions, but if you were to give and kind of think of yourself in standing behind your table, somebody walks up to your table and says, what are these things? I don't get it. What is it? Give us your elevator spiel on why they should own a leopard gecko and what kind of tips you would give them.
So if someone came up, because anybody that I'm always standing through the expo, I'm never sitting. I'm not. I am always. If I have to stand for 7 hours, I'll stand for 7 hours. I will talk to everybody that comes by my table, and basically I'll greet them when they come up to the table and they start looking, and I'll ask them, "Have you ever had a leopard gecko before?" And there are a lot of people that had one, but they may have had one years ago and they were maybe looking to get back into it. But there's a lot of people, they're like, no, I don't know anything about them. So basically I would just give them a rundown of the history of them, basically where they come from, what type of environment they live in. And then I'll even go into their care. As like, I said, these animals are very amazing animals, and they come in, I think right now there's 32 different morphs of leopard geckos. Yeah, it's crazy. And I said, they come in all colors, all patterns. I said, it's almost impossible not to find something that you don't like with all the morphs that they have. And I said, each one of them has their own personality. And basically I'll run down with, what you'll need to take care of them, tank size. You can go bioactive, but you can go as simple as like, a vinyl reptile mat. Like, I never recommend the reptile carpet to where they get stuck in there and they're pulling their, nails out and all that type of stuff. I recommend the vinyl stuff that it's very easy for them to walk on. And then basically go through their supplementing care. And then I said, if you really take good care with them, and I said, you don't have to follow my care sheet like the Bible. I said, it's just recommendations. I said, because they're very hardy animals and they adapt very well. I said, so don't overthink anything. I said, that's pretty much the worst thing you can do. I said, so I always say, once you get the leopard gecko, let it kind of hang out in the enclosure for about a week or two without handling it, and then let it settle in. And I said, it may not eat for about a week or two, but some of mine has started eating right away when they fed them the first time. I said, so if they do go off food, I said, that's kind of normal. I said, so don't, get crazy upset about it if they're not eating. And I said, especially this time of year in the wintertime, I said, I've already had some of mine slow down on eating because of the wintertime. And then it picks right back up.
Sorry.
Why don't people do that?
Why don't? Oh, I thought you meant why don't we cool down our geckos?
Why
It's
don't
like
people cool down and not
Oh.
eat so much during the winter?
I do.
Yeah.
I'm rooming
We
downstairs
tend to
for
eat
8
a lot
hours a
more
day.
comfort foods and then
Yeah.
way too
Right.
much.
Right. But yeah, I just basically give them a whole rundown of the animal's history, keeping history. And I said, they've got great personalities. I said, I hold these from the time they hatch out of the egg into what you see here in front of you. I said, so they love to be, I really think the leopard geckos, if you do socialize them, they want to be held. I know you'll have some that are skittish still, because I've got a couple of them that are still on the skittish side, but most of the time, from when I start handling them, when I do, they're very susceptible of being handled for a long period of time. And I just try to get people excited about this animal that's never had them before. And I always tell people that buy one from me. I said, any questions you have, there's no such thing as a dumb question to me. So if you have to text me at 11 o'clock or 12 o'clock at, midnight because you're having a problem, go ahead and do it, because that's the service I'm providing you with customer service, because I want to see this animal thrive. And when I want to see you to be happy with this animal, and then down the road, you may come back and get another one. But I said, if you take good care of these animals, they'll live on average anywhere from 10 to 15 years, if not longer.
I heard two things there that was really impressive. Sharing the passion,
Yeah.
sharing the information. That's one thing. Anybody can. Okay, let me pull out my care sheet. Okay, a leopard gecko is anybody can do that, but
Right.
if you're standing behind a table and you're sharing the passion, and it's not about sales, it's about getting people understanding these animals aren't icky and slimy, and it's about sharing the education, but sharing the passion as well. So I think that that's super, super important. And I've lost my second point completely.
Well, what melts their heart is there's some of them that, like, if they're still kind of undecided after me telling them all of that, and they're still kind of on the fence, I'll ask them if they want to hold the animal. So what they'll do is, I'll make them hand sanitize, and then I'll actually have them put on like a surgical glove, because with other animals, I'm not saying that they're going to pick up something, but I'm always cautious.
Yeah.
And once I put that animal in their hand, it usually, it just, you can just see the reaction on their face, how amazing they think that animal is.
I don't mean to dominate the conversation here, but I've got to tell the story that my greatest thrill at reptile shows is to see the family walk up table after and I can see them coming table. Now they're standing in front of ours, and I can see the kids going like this, and I can see mom and dad just kind of, taking that step back. So now my job is not as a salesman. My job is to convince mom and dad to hold an animal. Mm-hmm. So we get the kids, because the kids are easy. You want to hold an animal? You want to, I'm just going to hold it here. You want to just touch the tail? Just touch the tail if you want to. Oh, that's so soft. And it's like, would you like to hold it? Yeah, I'd like, okay, hands over. And then the kids are like, and I can see mom and dad, maybe a little interest going, Mom, Dad, would you like to touch the tail? And the times that we get mom and dad to actually hold an animal and say, oh my gosh, this is kind of cool.
Yeah.
That's a month's worth of shows for us. That's a month's worth of talking on emails and, chat and messenger and stuff. That makes it all worthwhile right there.
Yeah, that makes my day. It brings the biggest smile to my face. And I actually had one parent actually ended up buying one for their son, but I didn't think the mother was ever going to give the gecko back to me, because once she held it, she's like, I don't know. I think I may just walk out of here with this thing. It's like, I didn't think I'd ever get it back, but I just love the reaction that people get seeing my animals. And I know there's a lot of people out there that's got great animals, and I know there's a lot of people that's got better animals than me. But it warms my heart when I know I'm doing something for the hobby and I'm creating something that people could really enjoy.
Exactly. And, it's that passion, sharing the passion. And now that it's coming to me again, finally, it's the second thing that you said in your initial statement was, how long will you support any of my questions? What do you mean how long? What do you mean how long? Forever.
Yeah.
And I can see that with you. We're the same way. Well, can I call you in 2 weeks if I have a problem? You can call me. Don't call me at 1 o'clock though. Don't call me at 1 o'clock.
Right.
I'm
Right.
asleep or I'm doing the TikTok.
Yeah.
But anytime, and I'll be, within an hour during the day, a couple of hours during the day,
Yeah.
I try to get back to messages, or at least within the day, I'll get back to people.
Yeah. Everybody that I sell. Yeah. Everybody I sell a gecko to, no matter if it's on Morph Market, Expo, wherever, I always take down either the phone number or their email, because usually right after that sale happens and they take it home, I will send them an email or a text, usually a week after, and just follow up with them and ask them, how's everything going? And do you have any questions about anything you may have concerns about? I always follow up with all of them.
Nice. That's above and beyond.
Yeah.
Anything that I'm sure people are doing that. I think we used to do the taking of the names.
We had the names for a newsletter, but we never did that.
Yeah. Yeah. Once we stop doing the newsletter,
like,
we stopped
here's your
getting
animal.
names.
No,
Yeah.
I'm just kidding.
Now get out of here.
Get out of here. You got your animal.
Go away.
That's just, I can't bring myself to do that. It's just, it all comes back from the way I was raised with, from my parents. My dad always told me, and, he always told me, if you're going to do something, don't do it half-assed.
Yeah. Yep.
Never do it. He said, because if you do it that way, he said, you won't amount to anything and you'll do it that way for the rest of your life. And that stuck with me from when I was 12 years old. And I just have it. I don't have it in me not to give the best customer service I possibly can for somebody. It's just not in me.
100% agree. And that's great to hear, especially like you were saying before, these are live animals. They're in our care. We're committed, 15, 20 years to that care. Love that attitude.
Mm-hmm.
Love the direction that you're taking this passion, this hobby of yours.
Mm-hmm.
I can't wait to see where you're going to be in a year or 5 years from now and see what you're doing.
Yeah, I wish I could go in a time. I wish I could fast forward and, see where it's going to, what's going to be like in 4 or 5 years. But I'm just excited about this season. The pairings that I have, that I'm doing this year, with the possibilities of what could be coming out color wise, pattern wise on these babies. It really has me excited to see what's going to happen.
That's what makes it fun.
It does.
Color viewers, one thing about that maybe they've missed in this whole conversation about GTL geckos, about yourself, that you'd like to share, if you don't mind.
One thing. Well, I can actually share that the other reptile, that the few reptiles that I just got from you that are going to be coming this way.
Surprise!
Yeah, exactly. But no, I've always envisioned starting out with leopard geckos from the start and then building that up. But I've always wanted to get into something else to offer alongside of just leopard geckos, because I know leopard geckos are beautiful. Don't get me wrong. They're great animals, but it may not be everybody's animal that they want. So I always wanted to get into something else to say, hey, look at these animals. You may not see these animals as much as you see leopard geckos, but these animals over here are amazing in their own way.
Perfect. And I think that goes hand in hand with some of the things that you said about, doing a reptile show. We've said this over and over and over. Sorry, viewers, for hearing it for the 772nd time, but diversify. Reptile shows, diversify, because, you're doing crested geckos, like we do a lot of crested geckos, and all of a sudden, there's 28 other vendors at the show. Yeah. There's 30 vendors at the show. 28 of us are selling crested geckos. How much are you going to stand out? But if you have some other animal on your table, or some other product, a 3D printed, whatever, you're going to stand out, number one. Mm-hmm. And number two, maybe that will carry your show for you. So 100% agree.
Yeah, absolutely. And it could be, like I
already
said,
been answered.
depending on whatever, other reptile you're working with, it could be something that, some of these species that you just don't see a lot of. And people are like, wow, I didn't know that thing, I didn't know this type of species existed out there, that type of thing.
Absolutely. And that's what, drives my passion is the ability to, again, be blessed to work with all these different
Yeah.
species. But
It's not all answered. You can put it up there. Sorry.
oh, okay.
There was part of the question I
Okay.
think was being
We
answered.
do have a question. Speaking of
Mhm.
the future, what are your plans for it? Possibly working with other reptiles. Okay.
It was kind of answered.
And,
Yeah.
yeah, I think so.
He just
Okay.
didn't specify.
I just to specify which one.
It's a secret still.
Exactly.
And Frank, our moderator that does top shelf job here, is sharing your sites as well. Your information is also in the description of this video. Folks, go out there and follow. Go out and follow Jeff and visit his page and visit his sites. He would greatly appreciate that. I would greatly appreciate that. And you'll gain a lot of knowledge, just like we have watching the show tonight.
Absolutely. And like I said, I really appreciate you guys having me on. I think you guys are top-notch people. I really respect what you guys do. And, I've watched a lot of your videos in the past, and it's somebody can't go out to YouTube and bring up your videos and say, hey, I don't know a lot about all these animals. They can't say that, because the information you give is top notch, and the way you conduct yourself, it's amazing to me. I really respect that. I really appreciate that. And as far as with my links and stuff like that, if anybody has any questions or just wants to reach out with a question about anything, whether it's availability of animals or just to talk about care or husbandry or whatever, don't feel afraid to reach out and contact me.
I appreciate the kind words to us. I will say, in our fans, our viewers, I should say, viewers know this better than anything, that 99% of this whole thing is Nanette. I'm just here, for the ride. So I'm just tagging along.
No.
Go out there and follow, because this is going to be a journey you're going to watch. You're going to want to watch from here until next year, in 5 years.
I want to see what he comes up with.
GTL Geckos is in the game, folks. They're in
Well,
it
thank
to
you.
win it.
I really appreciate it. I work, like I said, I give it no matter what I get into, I give it 100%. I don't like to fail in anything that I do. And I know, I always was brought up, you have to fail first before you can succeed. And that's with anything in life. And I work very hard to achieve what makes me happy, but what makes everybody else happy that's really, looking to have one of my animals at some point in time, or, with people just even come by my table and just want to talk leopard geckos, I'm up for that too. I don't have to sell you an animal, but if I give you information that changes your mind later down the road, that makes me happy.
Mm-hmm.
Sounds like a winner to me.
Absolutely.
Thank you, everyone, for watching. Jeff, hang on for just a minute.
Sure.
I appreciate everybody joining tonight. Great show. We've got some great ones coming up too. Stay with us Thursday nights at 6:30 p.m. Central Time. Sunday night is our Palm Street
at 7:30.
We'll see you there. Bye-bye, everybody.
Bye, everybody.